Everybody, this is Ken from I Can Everything. If I can do it, you can do it. So here's my daughter's 2006 Prius. This car has been pretty damn good. All three of my daughters have had these Priuses. I'm sorry about the look. I just got done replacing the inverter pump, which is what this video is all about. Because my AM2 fuse, located right there, kept blowing. So what ended up happening is my daughter was driving down a main road and all of a sudden her car just dies. There's no warning, there's no sense or any sign that anything's going to go wrong. It just dies. However, when it does die like this, you still have power to the car. You just don't have any engine power because the AM2 fuse, which when you pop off this lid, is the second one down. You can see I've marked it with the yellow markings right here. That fuse controls quite a bit. And one of the main problems with the AM2 fuse blowing and the car dying is because of your inverter water pump. Okay, so the inverter pump has coolant that runs through it. And this is your coolant reservoir for your inverter. And then your inverter pump is down in there, which I'm going to show you a little bit more in more detail when I turn the camera around and go over how I replace this. This is the second time I've replaced this pump. This time I got a upgraded pump for the car, and I've pretty much done it now, you know, without even thinking about it on the second time. So the first time was a big learning lesson. So I'm hoping to take away that learning lesson for you guys and show you how to do it nice and easy here. All right, here's some info for how to replace your inverter coolant pump on a 2006 to 2009 Toyota Prius. I'm doing this in the vertical mode of filming just because it's easier to move the camera around when we're looking inside the engine. All right, so I'm going to go over some basics with you first so that you have an understanding of what's going on. So this is your inverter. This is your inverter coolant. The inverter coolant lines, they run underneath here and they go to your inverter pump, which is right there. That round device that's right there, that's your inverter coolant pump. So basically what ends up happening is your inverter gets hot, the pump pumps this fluid through it, keeps it cooled off. It's just like a basic antifreeze. When that pump goes bad, the little propeller on it gets seized and now starts to draw too much current from the car, which blows the AM2 fuse. All right, so we're going to change that inverter pump out. Basics. First, you're going to remove these little fasteners that hold this plastic shroud on. If you need to replace those because they rip out, they're really cheap, or you can just use a zip tie like I did. Next, after you remove that plastic shroud out of the way, I just replaced this pump, by the way, so I'm not actually replacing it on this video. I'm going to point out everything to you, but this is so simple with basic mechanical skills. If I can do it, anybody can do it. Next, these are your inverter brackets, the mount brackets. You're going to remove this bolt and this bolt. This one broke on me because it was rusted, so I've got to replace that. Once you remove those two bolts, you're going to come over to the side here and you're going to remove the two bolts that hold this bracket onto the side of the inverter. Just get that bracket out of the way temporarily so it gives you free, easy access to get down there to that inverter pump. Once that bracket is loose and this one is removed, then you can lift this up. You can see how it moves a little bit. And you can put a 2x4, I find is real easy. Stick a 2x4 underneath of this, and it gives you some leverage so you can push on that 2x4 out here. You only need a 2 or 3 foot piece. And that gives you a little leverage to kind of raise and move this whole device up a little bit. An extra ½ inch to 1 inch is going to make the world of difference so you can get the new pump in and the old pump out. After you get the 2x4 under there and raise this up, then you're going to come over here and you're going to remove typically 3 bolts. One of the brackets that I had only had 2 bolts in it, so I don't know if somebody replaced it in the past, but you'll see there's one rusted bolt there that holds the corner of the bracket. another bolt that's right there that holds the actual pump to the bracket. And then there is another one right at the base. You can see that right there. That's the third one. Now to get to that third bolt, you're going to have to reach your hand in under here with an open end wrench and go in this direction to get that way over there to, you can see my finger wiggling down there, so you can get to that last bolt to pull that out of the mounting bracket for the inverter pump. Okay, after you have the inverter pump bolts removed, then the next thing is to get a pair of pliers and squeeze this little bracket together. This little clamp, sorry I called it a bracket. This little clamp, you squeeze that together and move this up away from the actual tube that the inverter has sticking out, the inverter pump has sticking out of it to put this coolant line onto the actual pump. So you squeeze this clamp together, move it out of the way. This hose kind of gets stuck on the plastic knob that sticks out of the top of the pump. You're going to have to get a grip on it and move it back and forth. I was able to put a pair of channel locks on there and just kind of squeeze it lightly just to break that seal just from being on there for so long, and the heat of the fluid kind of sticks it together. But it's real easy to get off. It's not hard. You just have to work on it a little bit. So once that clamp is moved out of the way, there is a second clamp that's at the bottom of the pump. That is, it's hard to see in there. You can see that's the lower hose, and that goes onto the bottom of the water pump. So you're going to remove both of those coolant hoses, and then once you do that, then you can kind of finagle the way that this comes out of here. It's not easy, but I was able to turn mine a little bit. You can move these coolant hoses out of the way. They just have little C-clamps that are under here. They're little plastic C-clamps, real easy to get to. There's one there, and then there's another one just to the left or just behind the left inverter pump, or the inverter bracket. That's it right there, so you can see that. And this hose is real easy and flexible to move out of the way. You can just move that out of the way so it doesn't bother you while you're trying to get that pump out. Once you get the pump out, then you're going to just connect your hoses back onto the new pump. The one thing I left out, I'm sorry, there is a power line that goes to the pump. I don't know if you can see the power line in this video, but there is a wire that goes to the pump. You're going to have to squeeze a little tab on that and work that power connector off. It's not easy. I ended up having to use a pair of pliers. Same thing, they just get stuck on there over time. But don't break it and don't pull on the wires. Only pull on the actual plastic housing of the wire adapter that connects to the inverter pump. All right, so just rewinding a little bit. 3 bolts out, 2 clamps off, and remove the wire to the inverter pump. Probably want to remove the wire to the inverter pump at the beginning if you can do it, just to remove the power from there. Next thing, remove the inverter pump, put the coolant lines on the new inverter pump, slip it back in there, put the power line on, and then get your bolts connected. It's pretty simple, folks. After you get that back in there, then you're just going to reattach this bracket, those 2 bolts on the side, 1 bolt here, and then 1 bolt here, and you are done as far as the install of the inverter pump. The next thing you need to do is you need to bleed the air out of the inverter pump. Now that sounds complicated, and some people are like, oh, I can't do that, I got to get a mechanic. But it is very easy. So I just took this cap off. There's a little bit of pressure under there just because the car was idling. You can see the coolant that's inside of this little reservoir. There's not very much. But what ends up happening when you replace that pump is air gets trapped in the coolant lines in those rubber hoses. So we want to bleed that air out. What I found first to do is to start the car and then squeeze this, and you'll see the water or the coolant moving, right? You see that, you see some bubbles in there. So you squeeze this tube. You're going to try to get the air out of this area. What I did was I actually moved this tube up and down, this hose up and down, to get the air pushing through or going backwards and exiting out through that cap. That was the initial. The next part, which you don't have to use a hose. Sometimes people will put a little 1/4 inch clear fluid hose on here onto this nipple. and there's a little black cover that goes over that. You can see it's right in front of the inverter. That's your bleeder valve. So that bleeds the air out of the coolant lines. So what typically is done, you attach a hose from here, run the hose up and put it right inside here, and then you undo with this 10mm open-end wrench. You just loosen this and fluid will start coming out along with air. It'll kind of be sputtering at first, and then once it's done sputtering and just has solid fluid coming out, you've bled out most of the air, if not all of it, and then you're good to go. Then you can just tighten this bleeder valve back down, remove your hose, put the little rubber cap back on, and then you're done. And then up here, you just have to refill this. It gets filled right to the top. It's hard to see those letters on there, but you can see it does have a full line. That means that basically this lip is the full line. So you're going to fill this back up with fluid, and now as you do that and the pump starts to run, it's going to start to draw fluid from this container. What I found is a good idea is you'll notice right away once this starts to pump through, because it's really not moving, and then this hose right here stays cool. Once it does get the air through and you start to get a flow, you'll start to feel warmer fluid go through here. It works its way through the system and then goes back down through the pump, and it just keeps going around and around and around like that. Pretty simple. So don't forget to put your cap back on after you top off your coolant, inverter pump coolant. And there is a little catch there. So it goes all the way around until it stops. And that's it, folks. It's pretty easy. Once you get that done, put your plastic shroud back on, right? Just put this back on here, add your nuts back in, and it's finished. Now don't get frustrated. It does get kind of difficult to get that pump out of there. And the new pump that I bought is bigger. Apparently it's an improved pump. I did get it off of Amazon. I think it was like 70 or 80 bucks. If I get a chance, I'll put a link in this video to show you the pump that I did replace it with. It had good reviews, so I'm hoping it lasts for a while. The pump that was in there, I replaced 2 years ago. So this is the second one that I replaced. However, the first one that I put in was only $29, and it was a cheapo knockoff on Amazon also. So I got the better pump this time. Now, after you get this all secured up, then start the car back up and you're good to go. You'll know right away if it was the inverter pump that was blowing the AM2 fuse, because as soon as you put this fuse back in, usually within 2 to 5 seconds, that fuse will blow. If it's not the inverter pump, if it is the inverter pump, once you put this fuse back in and start the car, you're golden, and then you don't have to worry about it again. I hope that really helps everybody. It's just a quick video on how to replace that inverter pump. It's not very detailed, but with basic understanding and knowledge of the way that this system works, you'll be able to easily get in there and take out a few bolts, undo a couple clamps, and you're good to go. Hopefully that helped you guys out. If anybody needs any further assistance, please leave a comment. If you have any other further tips that can make this easier, leave them in the comments also. I'll try, if I remember, to put the information in online for the inverter pump that I purchased off of Amazon. So that's something for you guys to think about. It might just help out to get a little bit better one, or maybe get one that's got better reviews. So that's it for the 2006 Toyota Prius inverter pump installation. Hope that helped you guys. Peace out.